there's so many things going on, and it's all happened so suddenly. One person in Canada who I think has been following it more closely than anyone else is our friend Barbara Kay, a columnist in various places, including the National Post, and she just wrote a piece in the Post called "Will 2020 be the year of reason in the cancel culture wars?" Most people, McGill's Prof. Vezier believes, want to see more brave conversations on difficult topics. Barbara joins us now via Skype. Barbara, great to see you again. Welcome back.
Thanks, Ezra. Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. I think you might be optimistic if you think 2020 is the year that cancel culture is overcome. But let me invite you to make your case. Why do you think we're turning the corner when all around me I see more censorship than ever? I see setbacks. Maybe I'm not seeing the good news. What do you think is reason for optimism?
Well, there was one piece of good news that, I'm I'm looking for reasons to be optimistic. So maybe I'm over-optimistic, but the piece of good news that I found encouraging was that the psychiatry department, or the Department of Transcultural and Ethnic Psychiatry, ethno-psychiatry, invited Dr. Kenneth Zucker to make a presentation at the Montreal Neurological Institute on his research into gender dysphoria. And the fact that Kenneth Zucker, who is considered highly controversial in this field, could be invited to come, that the lecture would go forward without protest, that people of various opinions would come together, listen to what he had to say, listen respectfully, and then engage with him in a respectful Q&A. This all did happen at McGill. McGill administration, in spite of some petitions for cancellation, there were, but they were, letters, not placard-wielding activists screaming, accusations of transphobia. It all went according to what you would consider to be civil opposition, or, two sides of a coin, and people voicing their opinions, in the way that universities are supposed to. So it was a good event, and it was well conducted, and the administration didn't even for a minute consider deplatforming Dr. Zucker. So for me, it was a positive moment. My editor was very glad to get some positive news on that front. So
you're talking about Dr. Ken Zucker. Now, he was actually fired from McGill, right? He believes that certain cases of... Well, why don't you tell us a little bit more about Dr. Zucker? I'm sure you know his case better than me. He was sacked.
Yeah.
He later got a retraction, I think, a payment. But tell us a little bit about who this guy is and why you think it's important that he gave a speech within this institution.
Okay, so he was not fired from McGill. He was fired from the Center for CAMH in Toronto. What is it? The mental health. Mental health. Okay, yeah. He headed up the gender dysphoria or gender identity clinic for decades, and he is an international expert on gender dysphoria. He is the editor-in-chief of the Archive of Sexual Behavior, which is, the leading journal for that domain. And so he was highly respected for many, many years in his profession. But the activists were not happy with his clinical approach to treating gender dysphoria because he had a very holistic approach. If parents brought a child that was confused about gender to his clinic as his patient, he didn't just say, "Oh, this child, this little girl thinks she's a boy. Okay, let's talk about puberty blockers." He said, "Well, tell me about this child. What's her behavior like in general? Is she depressed? Is she anxious? Have there been family issues?" In other words, he does treat his patients as a psychotherapist. Activists nowadays, in the last several years, have decided that gender dysphoria is not a disorder. It's a normal condition, and psychotherapists should really not be offering treatment of that kind to children. They don't need therapy, they need affirmation. So on the affirmation model, Dr. Zucker became suddenly very incorrect in his approach, and the activists were out to get him. They made false allegations about him, that he was practicing something they call conversion therapy. He was doing nothing of the kind. He does endorse for those children who are persistent in their dysphoria. He does endorse puberty blockers and the rest of it. So it was false allegations, and he therefore he was sacked, but he did sue CAMH and did receive a payout, but he was not reinstated, and now he's practicing privately and continuing with his research.
That's an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show, which is a show I do every day. I do a monologue, interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. But you've got to subscribe to it, which you can do at premium.rebelnews.com.